Hello, everybody. Nice to see you again. It's been a year since I've seen many of you. Some new faces, some old faces. I think all this stuff that we're talking about really relates to data and what data is doing. I mean, data is driving all this. Data is driving chat. Data is driving everything that's out there today. I want to bring you a real live example of some of the stuff that the team at Buzzboard is doing with their data. How many of you think of Buzzboard as a sales app from prior conversations? Maybe some of you saw it a couple years ago. The company has really evolved into thinking much more holistically about data. And one of the things the company came to a realization about is that sales reps are very challenged to really leverage all the data that's available to them. I see some nodding heads. I mean, sales reps can only do so much. You could put a Mercedes or a Ferrari in front of a sales rep in terms of tools and applications, and they really just need to drive a VW or a Toyota. And to expect sales reps to take advantage of what's in a Ferrari, I think is maybe perhaps misguided. And so you need to really reduce it down to the essence. And so that's one of the case examples I'm going to share with you this afternoon. So there are billions of pieces of data out there. I think Manish will agree to that. I mean, there's data coming out of everybody's pores, everybody's everything. Data is everywhere, right? And making use of that data is really what matters the most. And figuring out what the so what is. I think Manish said something about machines will figure it out, but we got to ask the questions, right? Isn't that what you said? I think it's really about that. I mean, machines will figure out all these data things, but people, we have to ask the questions. And so at Buzzboard, they think about connecting all these endless streams of data dots. They're all over the map. The platform that they're using has something like 20 million business listings by some 1,200 pieces of data. Some of that data just says they don't have something, but there's an enormous amount of data out there surfacing everywhere, and it's really about driving meaningful insights. I think we heard earlier this morning about meaningful conversations, engaging conversations, one-to-one conversations. That's really where all this is going. And last year when I was here, I talked about, the self-buying platform. Somebody talked about it earlier this morning. I believe it more today than I did a year ago, and I think I believed it pretty convincingly last year when I talked about, we buy our airline tickets online, but we don't fly the airplane here. Merchants are every day, more and more merchants are going to be willing to buy their stuff versus have somebody sell it to them. And I think Charlie's probably going to talk about churn at some point, maybe tomorrow. I think churn is a function of overselling. That was talked about earlier. A machine will not oversell a merchant because a machine will sort of apply what the data suggests rather than the emotional need to make a commission, to do something different, to beat the next person. Just as Uber, when we have self-driving cars, will not take a long distance to get somewhere to jack up the fares, Uber will be extremely efficient. I don't think they'll do that, but you never know. But it's the least cost routing. And so I think that machines eventually will be what merchants interface first with to start to engage with these telcos and directory companies, any companies that sell to small businesses. But as we heard in the last presentation, there will be chat intervention, whether it's live chat or bot chat. So that's kind of the future I see going on. And underneath all that is data. So in the real world today, we still have humans in the mix, and we got to talk about how to leverage the humans with better data. So meaningful insights really do matter because what do? They drive the conversations. The insights do drive relationships, emotions, decisions, all that stuff. Ultimately, meaningful insights drive acquisition. It drives growth and retention. Why does this not work today? The team at Buzzboard has been inside a bunch of companies, and what you see is that the data is unreliable internally. There are numerous silos. The company's working with the big U.S. publisher. There are probably 4 or 5 different silos of information, customer information. Those silos of information do not talk to each other. The people in the organizations who sit on top of those data silos don't talk to each other. I mean, it's corporate, what's the word? Corporate incompetence, not incompetence, just corporate legacy issues getting in the way of really leveraging the data. Multiple sources, it's disconnected. I was sitting next to a guy on an airplane the other day, and he was talking to me, and I said, so what are you working on? He shows me his spreadsheet. It's his, it's his customer spreadsheet, right? He works for a really big company that has Salesforce, and he's working inside of his Excel spreadsheet. That's where he's living. So all of these things are going on in the marketplace. There are multiple people. There's also a whole workflow piece that's broken in all these organizations. How many of you agree with this picture that I'm painting? How many of you have seen this before? Okay, some of you. So there are problems out there. It's all disconnected. It's not working. The way Buzzboard is thinking about it is that this data needs to be leveraged across these organizations. The organization's primarily thinking customer-facing are marketing, sales, and customer support. And in each of those cases, applying data, you apply it a little differently. In the marketing piece, it's around product fit. It's around segmentation. In the sales piece, it's around giving the sales rep the necessary information to have a compelling conversation. And in the customer support, it's knowing how to answer those customer calls based on data, having the context to have that conversation. And this is really where I think all of this data is going to change the relationships these companies have with these customers. It's across all these dimensions. I think Buzzboard probably thought about it as being mainly in sales when they first entered this journey and talking and working with companies. And they thought that sales was the place this was all going to happen. But as they got more involved in each of their company situations, it became very clear that the data was resonating very, very significantly both in the marketing and in the customer support areas, because that's areas that people hadn't thought of really leveraging the data. So here's what we see when the team goes out to meet with customers on literally every occasion. Lead gen tactics cross teams vary from company to company and within the company. The processes are totally inconsistent. The rep activity varies between markets. Buzzboard works with a bunch of big U.S. companies with multiple offices in multiple cities, and literally every office does it differently. Every office does it differently, every organization within that. I mean, it's a very challenging situation to take advantage of all these things and all the technologies that's out there. And there's very little transparency between and among sellers and managers. Salespeople and the managers are always kind of trying to game each other. And I think eventually data gets rid of all this because in some ways, at least at the bottom end of the market, we'll see a lot of self-buying platforms over the next 3 to 5 years. I think it's going to be sooner. I think that the data and the urgency is going to drive companies to go to self-buying platforms. So we see tremendous, a lot of dysfunction in these organizations today. They go in and usually recommend a piloting approach, piloting a partner approach. Improve the targeting. It's remarkable that when I often go see some of these customers as a board advisor, and we'll start to ask questions, and it'll come up that, a large company knows exactly this much about 400,000 customers. They know that they buy this product from them, and that's all they know. They may know their address, their phone number, and the category that they're sitting in, but they don't know anything else about that business. They know that they bill them monthly for $50 for a bold listing or a quarter-page ad or a, some routine thing, but they know nothing else about them. And it's kind of, you sit there in these meetings and you kind of go, how can you not know more about your large base of customers than the one thing they buy from them? And it's really kind of remarkable. So there's also this, I was telling some folks here that I was recently out on a sales call with a couple of local reps. And, these are organizations that you hope are driving more efficiency, more effectiveness in the marketplace. And I don't think it was a representation of the rep's capabilities, but the processes that sit around this rep. She had an iPad out, she had a laptop out, she was on her phone, she had paper. I mean, today it shouldn't be that difficult. And what you realize is that a machine sitting in the middle of that and sort of taking that experience away will actually ultimately be better. And I think what it allows for is more support on the back end eventually. Anyway, lots of challenges inside of these organizations. And what Buzzboard is doing now is they're going inside of these organizations and they're really providing essentially unlimited access to the platform, both the sales app and the marketing platform. One of the things that the team has realized is most of these large organizations need a lot of help. They don't have people to do demand gen and lead generation for them. So the team is essentially going in there and also laying on a piece of professional services to help them do all this. Because, as large and as big as these companies are, they're still fairly far behind in understanding this stuff. I think it's, and to the earlier point, they haven't done a tremendous amount in understanding who their customers are and what else they're doing. So a company may say, oh, well, we have 400,000 customers paying us $50 a month or $400 a month, but we don't know that they're spending $10,000 over here. We don't know they're spending this amount of money over here. We don't know that they're doing this over here. These companies have a very myopic view of their customer set. And I think that probably applies across the board, not just in the local media sector, but for every other business that sells to small and medium-sized businesses. I've been spending a lot of time talking to the big cable companies in the U.S., Comcast and some of those brands you all have heard of, Time Warner Cable, not on their ad sales business, but on their communication services business. And what do they know about their customers? They know that they sell them some connectivity for $175 a month. That's all they know about them. So all these large institutions that have built really, really large-scale businesses are very myopic when it comes to understanding holistically about their customer base. And the risk of knowing nothing else other than I sell this guy connectivity is that somebody's going to come in and offer them something else and steal that business. Because at the end of the day, all this stuff that's being built in the cloud allows anybody and everybody to come and poach your customers. Whether it's XERO in accounting or Gusto in payroll services, all these new startups are going to go in and disrupt the incumbents. They're going to disrupt them because most of the incumbents have been essentially cashing checks from their customers and learning nothing about those customers. So Buzzboard sees the world this way: acquire, grow, and retain. They spend a lot of time thinking through this with their customers. A lot of the time is spent over here in better targeting. So the use case that I'd like to share with you is really what's gone on down at Dex in Dallas. For those of you who know what that company is, that's the company that was Super Pages and was Dex Media and was Sprint Yellow Pages, about 5 or 6 Yellow Page companies. They've come together under one brand called Dex Media, And this is probably the best use case. So they came to the BuzzBoard team, or the BuzzBoard team went to them and said, okay, how can we help you? They had a severe need of driving new acquisition. All these companies are in this case of having to acquire new customers. And it's very difficult in the marketplace. So, and they use they're selling something called DexHub. DexHub is essentially a branded version of, I think, what Cameo sells. And what the teams did is they essentially profiled what those customers would look like if they were viable for that product. So there's a woman down at Dex Media. She's actually in Denver. She essentially sits on top of the platform and runs query after query after query by market. And eventually she puts out to the customers, to the sales reps, and this is kind of how antiquated the system is. She does it in an Excel spreadsheet with a map, okay? She plots them on a map, puts them in an Excel spreadsheet and says, here, Mr. Rep, go sell these customers. And they don't use the BuzzBoard sales app. They use their own kind of sales app. But the evidence is pretty clear that by having somebody in the marketing department do this analysis of what the best customers look like to fit the profile of the product they're trying to sell, the results are pretty substantially better. And I know that the companies were in a bake-off with a couple of the other data providers out there, and they had some data around social stuff, but not the richness that the BuzzBoard platform offered them in terms of some of the technologies that the SMBs are using. And I'm not going to go through these because I have 4 minutes, but they do a lot of stuff on inbound lead generation as well. So this is so Dex is is sort of the best use case where the team put together stuff that helped the marketing department do 3 things. 1, send out an email to customers to get hand raisers. 2, send out printed mail to get hand raisers. And 3, actually push leads directly into the hands of sales reps. And so there's a tremendous amount of data in the platform that can be spooled up into little bite-sized pieces of information that go out to the customer base. Stuff like this, infographics. This is one where we're hearing tremendous interest on, where this being a customer's proprietary site, you put in a little widget over there, they enter their website, they get a very quick little piece of an assessment of their web presence, and then they're able to follow up with them. So, in about 5 months, $1.5 million in incremental sales. It's not sales that they believe they would have done, but $1.5 million in incremental sales in 5 months. The old way was email, Excel, phone calls, no context to the data, no linkage to the solutions. The data was basically name, address, phone number, and category, very straightforward data. All the resources were allocated based on spend of customers versus the opportunity. Very traditional way of going to the marketplace. The new way was really to use rich contextual data to inform the reps which ones to go after, not to go after ones that the persona didn't essentially fit the DexHub solution that they were selling. And the conversions were, significantly better. I think they probably lowballed the number of 1.5 million because, the customer doesn't want to tell us that they perform better than that because you get into the negotiating of the various models. The other thing that Dex has done with BuzzBoard is they've taken their print customers only, pushed them up into the cloud, appended all of those customers with this very rich data set, and now they're starting to take a look at that and figure out, okay, for the last 5 years, all we've done is renewed this segment by mail. Well, we still may renew part of that segment by mail, but we see over here that there's a whole segment that's spending a tremendous amount of money on other stuff that we should be able to go get our hands on. And so that's something that's going on, and they're in the process now. And it's remarkable. I'm talking to the woman who runs all this data and says, "Oh, I've got all these segments I can go after, but I'm challenged to sort of move those into Salesforce and then move it out to the sales rep." I mean, there still are process challenges within all these organizations, but there's a whole different way of going to the marketplace than name, address, phone number, and oh, Joe's in this category. This is really appending the data, connecting that data to the product you want to sell, and then pushing that out to the sales rep in whatever fashion. Eventually, over time, it'll flow into Salesforce, and it'll be a nice, elegant process. But I think that number up there, $1.5 million in 5 months in incremental sales, really is a great story. So I think data is going to drive everything. I think in 3 to 5 years, and we can talk about this later today, Charlie, but the whole shift to self-buying platforms is going to start to really happen at the lower end of the market, because these organizations cannot possibly afford to continue to sell the bottom end of the market with their current cost models. And that's it for now. So now, Charlie, I don't know where you're at. So I think I finished right on time.
You did finish right on time. So
I love the clock back there. That's excellent.
Perfect. So
that's an excellent.
We'll have more. Actually, we'll pick up this conversation at the panel later. But really, everything you described feeds a automated platform.
Yes.
Right now, it's feeding people, but eventually, it feeds an automated platform.
That's true.
Yeah.
I think all this data stuff is going to feed these. I don't know if it's an automated platform. What it'll be is that, you'll drive people to a site. They'll do a quick analysis of your web presence or something about your business.
System.
What's that?
More of an inbound system.
It'll be an inbound system, and then you'll take the rep through that journey. I think we saw one up here with Yolk. Was that how you say it? Yolk?
Yolk.
How do you say it?
Yolk.
Yolk. Yolko. How do you?
Yolk.
Yolk.
There's 2 O's in it.
Yolk? Okay, Yolk is basically a buying platform, essentially. And the thing is that, these machines learn, right? They can see an event and go, oh, okay, I learned from that. These sales organizations that have 1,000 reps on the street, and they go out and see a customer, and there's all this great learning that goes on that goes up into the cloud. It's vapor. Okay, after the sales call, nothing gets captured, and that's not a human.
You mean the atmospheric cloud, not the.
Not the technology cloud, but the atmospheric cloud. It just gets it evaporates,
yeah, okay.
And that's. I mean, think about it. I mean, if you have an organization of 300 reps, and they're out having 3 conversations a day, that's 900 conversations a day, times 20 days. All of that stuff gets lost. And machines have the ability to learn from all those conversations. And this is not to say people don't add value, but they can't capture the kind of learning that machines do. And so all those conversations and all that learning is, 90% of those learnings are lost. And I think that's where machines are really going to have a significant impact on how this stuff happens going forward. So.
Okay.
Was that a question, or was that just me rambling on?
No, that's fine. We'll leave it there for now. Now we really are taking a break.
Okay, we're going to have a break now.
So we'll be back here at a half an hour, and we'll have the final 2 sessions. And so enjoy the coffee, and we'll see you shortly.